Okay, today is possibly a very important video. June 23rd at precisely 9:34 a.m., I received an email. This email was from a whistleblower claiming to be an employee of Quantic Lab. For those that don't know, Quantic Lab is a QA testing company, an outsourced quality assurance company to be precise, operating out of Romania. Initially intended to be a game development company, that business model proved unviable at the time, and a transition was made to quality assurance. Quantic Lab has a bit of a bumpy history. After bankruptcy early on, they were acquired by THQ Nordic, and then in late 2020, finalized in 2021, I believe, they were acquired in a bulk purchase by Embracer Group, which is an industry powerhouse. Specifics and timeline aside, Quantic Lab has operated as a QA testing company for some very large names in the industry over these past years. Adding this in after the fact, it occurs to me that I should probably define what outsourced QA actually is. Let's say you're a publisher and you have a video game or a piece of software or anything even remotely similar. How do you go about improving it? Well, you have a variety of different options, but one of the most important things that you can do is have it tested by a team of people who are dedicated to finding when, where, and specifically how it breaks. Now, some publishers have what's called in-house QA teams, which is a separate department of testers under the same corporate banner who fulfill that role. But many publishers and software companies actually don't have in-house teams, and instead they outsource the process of testing for bugs, glitches, and other defects to a third party. That is what Quantic Lab is. It is a third party that takes on the responsibility of testing products because theoretically they are able to then standardize and perfect that procedure for maximized results. Game developers have a particular skill set, and quality assurance is actually a completely different skill set. So we don't expect, nor should we expect, that the same team who made the game itself does all of the rigorous testing required to ensure that it's ready to ship. That is what Quantic Lab does, outsourced quality assurance. According to their website, they have worked on titles like Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, Cyberpunk 2077, and a host of smaller projects as well. For today, we need to focus primarily on Cyberpunk 2077 because it is one of the most high-profile examples in all of gaming, but my source was exceptionally clear that this kind of scenario is not isolated to just one game or one project. Nearly everyone involved in video games has likely heard of Cyberpunk 2077. It is one of the most famous examples of launch day failure in existence, and yet the true reason for that failure is almost a total mystery. Some will tell you that it came from corporate oversight, management failure, and shareholder expectations that led to a spiral of bad decision making, but developers themselves were largely innocent. This is likely true to a significant degree, but is it the only thing? Others will claim that they simply bit off more than they could chew. Technology wasn't ready for this level of ambition, and this was inevitably going to happen as the marketing cycle spun out of control. There are a multitude of theories, claims, and speculations, but today I want to highlight the information I was given and put forward an entirely different explanation, which will simultaneously shed light on an area of the gaming industry that needs radical improvement. This is where I have to clarify a few things. This is a whistleblower, highlighting what may very well be illegal corporate practices while violating their non-disclosure agreement in order to put forward the truth. To bolster credibility and verify legitimacy, they sent a series of documents. I've been able to examine a 72-page QA testing file, Quantic Lab human resources paperwork, workflow charts, production maps, detailed spreadsheets tracking productivity, and some additional documentation from very early in the QA/development process. These are blurred in totality because I'm fairly sure that they are confidential, highly confidential, and that basis could be used to take down the video if I show them directly. My subjective opinion from examining these files is that they are legitimate. The annotations seem real when compared to actual in-game missions, employee names, and dialogue. The timeline matches perfectly when compared to development roadmaps and the alleged issues, plus a few other things that lead me to believe that this person is exactly who they say they are, and does have internal knowledge of the corporate and functional environment inside Quantic Lab. However, I do not have internal corporate memos or email chains and policy paperwork that mirrors the specific claims that they make in terms of illegal activity. That kind of information would almost certainly expose their identity right off the bat if showcased anyway, and the company allegedly has extremely tight control over what you can and cannot say, with strict and very aggressive non-disclosure agreements, as well as security measures to prevent leaked material. So the point here is, I believe the source to be real, they have provided extensive evidence to support that fact, and have made serious claims about the quality of QA activities at Quantic Lab. With all that in mind, let's dive in. Cyberpunk 2077, as we are all undoubtedly aware, would encounter a tremendous number of problems before, during, and after release, but one of the worst and most damaging issues, according to my source, was quality assurance. Fourth quarter 2019 is when it truly began. Project leads were sent to Poland, interfacing directly with CD Projekt Red, and the initial team was given their task. one small issue. That initial team was intended to be composed of industry veterans, those with extensive experience in quality assurance who understood the process and workflow. But in reality, it was almost completely composed of what the industry calls juniors, who had less than a year, or worse, less than half a year of experience. CD Projekt Red was not aware of this. In fact, according to my source, they had been operating under the impression that they would receive a dedicated team of veteran testers, and most likely thought that this would contain some of the same people who worked on Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. In reality, those veterans had almost all resigned from the company, but CD Projekt Red did not know this. Even the project leader had barely 1 year of experience, and when we are talking about one of the most ambitious games in all of history, that kind of inexperience is a problem. I would like to clarify the individual testers and managers, from what I am told, did the best with what they had. They worked hard, they gave it their all, but as we will soon discuss, there is only so much you can do when the deck is stacked against you. Ironically, on theme here, people have accused upper management of ruining the Cyberpunk 2077 launch many times in the past at CD Projekt Red. Upper management inside Quantic Lab would prove to be an issue. Somehow, some way, a philosophy that the raw number of bugs would somehow equal good performance had taken hold within the corporate structure, and this led to a bit of a problem. A policy became enacted where bug quotas were implemented for testers, the highest of which, pertaining to free roam, I think it was set to 10 per day per worker, according to my source. The idea was that this would drive productivity and craft a clean, polished game. The decision came from the top down. And in theory, sure, that might work with a proper timeline, but for something as ambitious as Cyberpunk 2077, something else began to happen, something more sinister. In order to meet this quota, every single day, testers began to bombard the development team with thousands of small visual and performance glitches, something tasked as negligible on the priority scale. It was not severe, it was not important, it was very small things all day, every day. A little bit of clipping on an item or a wall, a little bit of pavement that had some texture problems, an audio bug in some dialogue, etc., etc. Instead of focusing on core issues with mechanical problems, quest lines, or game-breaking exploits being the target, a massive, never-ending fire hose of random, unimportant glitches were being sent to the developers that consumed a ridiculous number of work hours to fix. But the vast majority of those bugs were totally irrelevant. Now, don't get me wrong, polish is absolutely important in any game, but what's more important is core functionality. And when you are required to submit a high number of bugs per day, it gets harder and harder to uncover or replicate the important issues. The ultimate consequence of this? Labor is spent on fixing surface level problems, while the underlying foundation is left to rot, because the quality assurance team isn't really able to dig into it. Eventually, after being bombarded by these smaller issues for a lengthy period of time, hundreds per day, thousands in total easily, CD Projekt Red just stopped focusing on them. Quantic Lab was specifically instructed to stop sending them through the low priority bug finds and to focus on bigger issues. But the damage was already done, and CD Projekt Red was already very unhappy. Short timelines, ambitious project, inexperienced and overworked quality assurance team members, plus a huge delay in fixing core systems because of an arbitrary quota. Well, that's a perfect storm. The internal pressure here, again, according to my source, was intense. Everyone was cramming to get this done, and everyone was forced to ride the person beneath them to get more done, because the lost time and lack of experience had boiled over. But perhaps there was a solution. In the summer of 2020, the testing team was expanded. 30 testers became 60 testers, and with that doubled team size came the expectation for double productivity. This turned out to be an absolute disaster. Quantic Lab was already struggling to fully staff all of their other projects, not just Cyberpunk 2077, so they were short on workers. These 30 new testers didn't come from other departments or games. They weren't industry veterans with any sort of experience. They were brand new hires, most of which had no prior knowledge of or experience with quality assurance. Some of them, the lucky ones, got 2 to 4 weeks of training, but some didn't. And for all their effort, and they did try to succeed, new employees in a field like that are not immediately useful. It takes time for them to understand the field. It takes experience for them to overcome obstacles and become productive eventually. So a team size doubling actually ended up hurting the overall project. Imagine having a team of functional testers that suddenly doubles in size, but the second half of that team doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. Rather than just working on the project, veterans and senior employees are having to train multiple of their coworkers in real time as they try to complete an already nearly impossible task. And once that chain of dominoes begins to fall, well, we've all seen what happens. Looking at these issues in tandem, you have a QA team that is either failing to keep up with the intended timeline, or worse yet, hindering the development as they struggle against an arbitrary quota that only serves to overwhelm and bog down the developers with non-critical exploits or bugs. It likely wasn't the only issue that led to the launch day failures of Cyberpunk 2077, but if true, it was a large and contributing factor that put pressure on an already strained process. But there's more. It is alleged by my source that during 2019 and 2020 especially, though these practices still exist to this very day, Quantic Lab would make false claims about team size to secure or extend contracts. This is where things get a whole new level of serious, because claiming to a partner that you will have, say, arbitrary number, 20 workers testing their product, but then having just 10 or less, means that they will get a severely reduced result. The quality will take a nosedive. And this will also put an insane amount of pressure on the testers who actually are working, which puts Quantic Lab in a really awful position. They have a multitude of partners, some public, some private, and when the quality of work is degrading as a result of lower team size than advertised, that would be an issue. It is also what can lead to a strained relationship, which is precisely what happened with CD Projekt Red, as they allegedly noticed that the quality of results they were receiving did not stand in line with expectations, owing to the fact that there was a significant lack of experience. To counter this, Quantic Lab allegedly holds a strict and very oppressive non-disclosure system, a €10,000 penalty for disclosing any confidential information whatsoever, and the definition of confidential becomes very flexible. Workers could not ever discuss projects that they worked on. Name in the credits does not matter. Don't talk about it. Don't use it as a portfolio example, reference material, or mention your involvement for any reason in any capacity. Management would threaten legal action, force employees to take down any mention that they had worked on specific projects, and these oppressive systems succeeded in one critical way, by suppressing information about corporate malpractice. My source also described an atmosphere where dissent is not tolerated. Disagree, you'll be ignored. Disagree too loudly, you'll be reprimanded, and continue to disagree long enough, or do even small arbitrary things that upper management disagrees with, you'll be coerced into resignation, which then stops any sort of internal change from ever happening. When it comes to blame, I don't believe it's my place to personally speculate. This person is the one responsible, that person should be fired, etc., etc. It's just not for me to say. My source has some strong opinions on that front, and certainly has a set of names that they believe are fully and holistically culpable, but summarized as an issue with upper management of the company, their ultimate goal seems to be spurring some kind of action to improve the company's culture and policy. Operating under the belief that all of this is precisely accurate, Embracer Group conducting some kind of internal audit would absolutely expose these issues, and could very well lead to a better functioning environment. Quantic Lab provides a valuable service, if done properly, and that service is utilized by many companies in the video game industry and beyond to test their products. Better methodology and corporate governance equals better testing. Better testing means better games, and better games quite obviously means that customers will have a better experience. It all flows down like a river, so Embracer Group becoming aware would probably be a good thing. Regardless, a well-articulated whistleblower decided to contact me. After examining everything that they gave me, I decided it was worth covering, so here we are. Cyberpunk 2077 may not have failed exclusively because of a faulty QA process, but if true, it was certainly a major contributing factor in the overall decline of that game pre-launch, culminating in what we saw during December of 2020, that is to say, one of the most controversial examples of a AAA game launching in an unfinished condition. What's to be done? I'm not sure. Perhaps Embracer Group or some higher functioning party can take a look at what's going on, but for now, this would explain a great deal of why and how Cyberpunk 2077 became infamous for failure. That's it. If you want to support the channel, there are links down below, primarily Locals and Patreon to get away from AdSense, also Odyssey, a YouTube platform alternative. There is another YouTuber to check out, merchandise, social media, and more, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. One final note, if they do decide to threaten legal action or take down the video or something like that, I'm going to view it as a sign of guilt. That's just my opinion, but yeah. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.